the override?
The override is the one next door.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's the main one.
Okay, ladies. Friends, we have so many countries present, 40 countries, so many delegates and representatives. It takes some time to get everybody in, but we need to proceed, and I'm going to invite Congressman Chris Smith to open this session and the conference within Lancaster House. So welcome to Lancaster House, Chris Smith.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much, and I want to begin by expressing on behalf of the American delegation, Alcee Hastings and I, and our ambassador, Kennedy, who's the special envoy for Holocaust issues, who's with me here today, for your extraordinary leadership, the work that your wife, your staff, Elliot, certainly has done a tremendous job, and to thank you for your leadership in making the London conference a huge success and for launching the ICCA. It is amazing. You know, this conference has been, I think, as you Brits put it, brilliant. So thank you on behalf of all of us here collectively. Let me just say very briefly that in 1982, during my first term in the United States Congress, on a trip that was arranged by friends like David Harris, who is here, I traveled with the National Conference on Soviet Jewry to Moscow and Leningrad to meet Jewish refuseniks in their homes and to engage Soviet leaders. For hours on end, our delegation heard stories of Soviet physical and mental abuse, systematic harassment, gulags and psychiatric prisons, and an array of seemingly wanton, brutal acts of anti-Semitism. To apply for an exit visa, a universally recognized human right, which at least on paper the Soviet Union had recognized, was to invite the cruelty and wrath of the KGB and other small-minded, morally stunted thugs. As you know, to seek freedom rendered the refuseniks ineligible for employment in Lenin's farcical workers' paradise. The Soviet system, militantly atheistic and morally incoherent, wouldn't let Jews leave, but didn't want Jews to stay either. A bizarre paradox. In Dr. Alexander Lerner's Moscow apartment, he was one of the leading refuseniks, our delegation heard Sharansky's mother admonish us to do more for her son because his life was in jeopardy. Raise Anatoly's situation with the highest officials, she asked us, which of course we did. To a new 27-year-old congressman, however, it was all very bewildering and deeply troubling. Why do they hate the Jews? Why the anti-Semitic obsession? A few years later, and shortly after Sharansky's release, I visited Perm Camp 35 in the Ural Mountains, a horrific gulag filled with prisoners of conscience. While there, I saw the solitary punishment cell called the Shizu, where Natan Sharansky suffered, prayed, and persevered. To the utter dismay of Lieutenant Colonel Austin, the Perm Camp KGB warden, a colleague and I interviewed and videotaped most of the prisoners and pushed for their release. In time, they all got out, following the path of Natan Sharansky, one of the bravest, wisest, and most noble men on the face of the earth. And then, as we all know, almost suddenly, the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact collapsed, and hope and expectation soared. A new day dawned, the matriculation of several dictatorships to democracy, respect for fundamental human rights. Remember the peace dividend and a better future for Jews. It didn't take long, however, to be disappointed, especially on the latter. In 1995, I chaired a congressional hearing entitled "The Rising Tide of Global Anti-Semitism," as it was becoming increasingly clear that the status of Jews in many countries was actually deteriorating. In some cases, they call it the privatizing of anti-Semitism. At another congressional hearing I chaired in 2002, Dr. Shimon Samuels of the Wiesenthal Center in Paris said, and he really nailed it, the Holocaust for 30 years after the war acted as a protective Teflon against blatant anti-Semitic expression, especially in Europe. That Teflon has eroded, and what was considered distasteful and politically incorrect is becoming increasingly an opinion. He warned ominously that, quote, cocktail chatter at fine English dinners can quickly end in Molotov cocktails against synagogues. In response to what appeared to be a sudden, frightening spike in anti-Semitism in several countries, including my own, we first proposed the idea of a conference of combating anti-Semitism under the auspices of the OSCE. Convinced that we had an escalating crisis on our hands, our delegation teamed with OSCE partners like Gert Weiskirchen and Senator Jerry Grafstein of Canada, and of course Gertz from Germany, to push for action and for reform. And many of you in this room played leading roles. Those efforts led to Vienna, Berlin, Cordoba, and Bucharest. Since then, and especially at the Maastricht December '03 ministerial, OSCE participating states made solemn, tangible commitments to put noble words into concrete action. Today in some countries, progress has indeed been made, and without collective action, things might be noticeably worse. Deterrence is always difficult to measure with any accuracy. Still, anti-Semitic acts have not abated in other countries, and in some the situation has gotten worse. So today in London, grateful to our British hosts, and especially to the exemplary work of the Right Honourable John Mann, we gather to confront and, to the best of our abilities, combat this highly disturbing resurgence of anti-Semitism, which we all know has been further exacerbated by the recent hostilities in the Gaza. Unparalleled since the dark days of the Second World War, Jewish communities around the world are facing violent attacks against synagogues, cultural sites, cemeteries, and individuals. Anti-Semitism is an ugly reality that won't go away by ignoring it or wishing it away. It must be defeated. This increase in violence is a chilling reminder that our societies still harbor a dangerous collection of bigots and racists who hate Jews. Thus, we gather to enlighten, motivate, share best practices, and organize legislative working groups, or caucuses, with particular emphasis on what practical steps we might take, not just to mitigate, but to crush this pernicious form of hatred. We hope the collective wisdom gleaned from this conference, the working groups, the London Declaration, will serve as a blueprint for serious and bold action. Our words here in London must be repeated at home with frequency, passion, tenacity, and matched and even exceeded by deeds. Not just words, deeds. If our fight is to succeed, we need government officials at all levels to denounce, without hesitation or delay, anti-Semitic acts whenever and wherever they occur. No exceptions. The purveyors of hate never take a holiday or grow weary, nor should we. Holocaust remembrance and tolerance education must dramatically expand, and the need to ensure our respective laws punish those who hate and incite violence against Jews must be strong.